Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to do my first half of my May wrap-up. So first is Mythos by Stephen Fry. It is basically Greek mythology retold in a slightly more modern take. So it starts with some of the origin myths with the first gods and goddesses and goes on into the brackets. I think there's several orders of gods and goddesses, and we see several myths from each of these gods, and a lot of them overlap in each other's stories. It's a 400-page book or something like that. And there are a lot of stories in this, so it's kind of hard to remember all of them, and I don't think you really need to in order to get a lot out of this. I think in general it is a good reference book, and I feel like it has been a good primer for me, but particularly it is done with Stephen Fry's trademark snark. He has this very engaging personality, I feel like, in everything that he does, and I love him as a person. So anything that he is involved in, I've enjoyed the things that I've consumed anyway. And I also actually listened to this as an audiobook narrated by him as well, and he is my favorite audiobook narrator, so it was just a really good compilation of things that I like. And because I have been a novice with Greek mythology, it just seemed like a really good entry point for me to something that I have always felt slightly intimidated by. It is one of the things that comes up in this book, or that becomes very clear after reading so many myths and stories and gods, becoming acquainted with so many gods and goddesses, is that Greek myth is so a big part of our culture, and it has a major impact in or it has a major influence in various things like literature, art, even things like brand names use things from Greek mythology. And I don't think I realized how we're surrounded by Greek mythology things, and that became very clear to me after reading this collection. Another thing that I really like in this book that Stephen Fry does is sometimes he talks about modern things, or things that has come that is sort of like, for example, certain words that have an origin to a story, or somehow there's a link there. He will often make those references. So I really enjoy this, and I will definitely be reading the other one in this sort of series. The second one I didn't like as much, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. He follows two teenagers in high school. One of them is sort of a loner. She's really smart, but she's an outcast because she's slightly different from everyone else. She doesn't really try very hard to fit in with the other people in the school. And she's called Marianne. And then we have Connell, who is this popular jock type figure in this book. And the two of them eventually end up having this relationship outside of the school world. This book basically follows, I think, 6 or 7 years of their lives from the point that this book opens, when they're high school seniors, I think, and then moving on 7 or something like that years ahead, with their on-off relationship. And it's very intimate at times, and sometimes they have other partners, and sometimes they have this romantic entanglement. But basically it's sort of that an attraction between them constantly, and a lot of this book seems to be about the failure to communicate what you're feeling and thinking to the other person, so you're always misinterpreting the other person. I think in general I didn't really get on with Sally Rooney's writing style. I found it to be more stylistic and very aware of itself in the form, but it felt to me ingenuine. I think I didn't feel like the style really paid off in terms of characters. I didn't feel like I got to know these characters fully. I felt like we were always left at a distance. I had a lot of issues with the way that the characterization was done. In particular, Marianne, who has suffered some kind of abuse in the past by her father, and then there's some kind of weird things around her brother as well. And her family relationships are always hinted at, but they're never fully explored. It doesn't seem like she's ever given a full voice in this to me. And Connell seems to be aware of her problems, but still abusing that, even though he's supposed to be this or it feels like he's supposed to be this charismatic and sympathetic character, especially after high school when he realizes his bad decisions. He's supposed to have grown out of that and realize how much power he has over Marianne. The two things don't really come together for me. I think also there's some things in Marianne's past and in character, like for example, she seems to have an eating disorder. There's constant mention of her eating very, very little, or eating her first meal of the day, or just having a coffee. There's a lot of hints at her having some kind of eating disorder. It's never explicitly told, but I'm surprised that I've never heard anyone mention that. Because it isn't explored in the book itself, there's no characters who really point at the fact that she has strange eating habits and that she's slimming down a lot over the course of the novel. And if it was a point to her character and the response she has to the abuse, it should have been dealt with in the book, but instead it's just there as this sort of, I don't know, characteristic or something like that. So I didn't really get on with this book. The next one I read I enjoyed much more, and that is Beatrix Potter, The Extraordinary Life of a Victorian Genius by Linda Lear. I actually talked about this book in my video called Inspiring Biographies of Inspiring Women, and in that video I talked a lot about the contents of this. But this book I buddy read with Amanda Center and Amy Anders, and I will link both of their channels in the description. But basically so the contents, as I said, I talked about in the other video, but the form of this I really liked. That Linda Lear is a very detailed and very thorough biographer. Her focal point to this biography is on Beatrix's relationship with nature and how that is always a central thing to her, that she sort of returns back to in every project that she takes on. There's some kind of connection to nature. The other title for this book is A Life in Nature, which is a good representation of the focal point and the theme of the thematic structure of this book. The style of it is very, as I said, very thorough. It must have been a major research project to make this, because she goes into various specific aspects of her life. So for example, when Beatrix Potter is buying up land and doing all kinds of inventive things with her farming, Linda Lear goes into the farming aspects of it. She talks about the various tools and things that she uses in her farming, how the thoughts about this farming tool were observed and responded to by other people in the area. It goes into all of the details and all the various aspects of her life, which could make it a fairly heavy book. I really like this. I think the only thing that is definitely worth mentioning is that there's a lack of Linda Lear herself in the book, and that takes away some of the personal touch to this. So there's not a lot of Linda Lear's own opinions in this. It's the research is the central point to this book, and a lot of the references are also Beatrix's own words, her own journals and letters and things like that. It feels like you can trust this biography, but it is more work to read. I get to know Beatrix really well through this book, which, I mean, that is a good thing for a biography, to feel like you really get a good and full sense of a person. Even the bad, because Beatrix was not just a fantastic person. She had her own issues, and I think it is always a good sign for me when a biographer shows both the good and the bad, so that you see that that person can think critically about their subject, which isn't always the case. So yeah, so it is fantastic, and if you're interested in her, you cannot go wrong with this book. The last one I finished so far in May is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell, and this is 17 Brushes with Death. Some of them are fairly dangerous and unavoidable, and some of them were a result of risky behavior. So one of the things is related to pregnancy, or some of the things are related to pregnancy and the complications of childbirth, which horrified me. And there's some chapters on swimming and the perils of outdoor swimming. There's sections on various meetings with other people, dangerous people, or just situations that could have been dangerous. And throughout this book, you both get these near-death experiences themselves, and how that changes your attitude towards life, towards yourself, and sort of how you relate to death when you've come to so near the brink so many times. But also it's a general memoir of Maggie O'Farrell and how she ended up leaving university, how she traveled to China and moved there basically on a whim to follow a boyfriend at the time, to her travels all over the world, having a child and becoming a mother. There's so many other things in this book that is sort of interweaved into these general theme of death. The experiences themselves are a lot of them are quite striking. The way she narrates it and thinks about them are very thought-provoking for me, and also she's a fantastic writer. I found this very beautiful. I wish she had written more nonfiction because I really liked her thoughts, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So I'm happy that one of the two hyped Irish writers I actually ended up liking, because Sally Rooney was not for me. So those are the books that I've read in May so far. I would love to hear if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them. Feel free to share your thoughts about Normal People, especially if you didn't like it. I know most people have. Most people I know anyway have loved it, but I'm really glad that I listened to the hype around I Am because I love that one. So so let me know any of your thoughts on these books, if you've read them or if you want to read them. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.